What are those things that light you up? And are you doing those on a regular basis? How can you craft a life out of that? And just remember that your life doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Nobody else has to understand it. It just needs to be rewarding and fulfilling for you. Money is not my motivator. My motivators are freedom and connection. Those are my values.
This is Philip Van Nostrand, and you are listening to the Epic Freelance Life podcast. How to make more money and live an epic freelance life. Okay, here we are again. I'm Philip Van Nostrand, host of the Epic Freelance Life podcast, and I'm really excited to be here today with a good friend of mine, Annika Howe. Annika,
Thank
welcome.
you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Philip. Thank you for having me.
Yay. Yes, I'm excited to be here with you too. And I'm talking with you all the way from New York to South Africa. And would you just introduce yourself real quick before we go into things?
Absolutely. So my name is Annika Howe, and I am a producer and a production company owner of, I think it's 15 or 16 years now. And I am many things. So in addition to being a producer, I am also a creative development and creative manager for the visual arts world, and I also run a consultancy.
Yeah. And for the listeners who don't quite know or maybe aren't in the industry, what does it mean when you say you're a producer? Can you give us like a real life example of something you've done
Yes,
recently?
absolutely. So as a producer, I'm focused on the commercial advertising and editorial world, and I specifically focus on photography and video. So that means when a company like, a major sports brand, without naming names, has a new shoe that they're launching and they work with a brand ambassador and an athlete, they will come to me and my company, and we will essentially project manage the entire production from start to finish. And we also are there to help curate, which photographers or directors would be the best fit for this campaign based on their visuals and based on their ideas. And then they come to me and my company to line up the visuals. I put together everything from A to Z. I'm handling all of the diplomatic client communications.
Yeah.
I'm putting the crew and the team together. That includes like location scouting, casting, and it also means I'm handling all of the juicy financials. Like, so we deal with budgets anywhere from, you know, 30,000 up to 5 million. So it really ranges. And my company specifically is focused on, international productions that are large scale or very intricate. And, a lot of what I do has an international angle to it.
Yeah, it's wild. And are you, I don't know if you're someone to brag, but will you be willing to brag just a little bit with us for like brands that you've worked with? I know some of these names are on your
Oh man,
website.
okay, my cheeks are flaming red right now. Thank you for asking. It's
Sorry.
okay. So I
But this is notable. So I think it's important to like know exactly who you're
Thank
working with,
you.
you
Yeah,
know?
so I feel
Yeah.
really honored and grateful to have worked with clients. A lot of the Fortune 500 companies, Nike, Adidas, magazines like GQ and Vogue and Men's Health, and
Mm.
also brands such as Adobe, and Hilton Hotels, American Express, Visa.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing. So you're doing like commercial campaigns for American
yeah,
Express
absolutely.
that people will see on billboards or in magazines or somewhere in the
Absolutely. We've
world.
had things,
Yeah.
on billboards across the world, in Times Square, but then also in magazines as well.
Have you ever have you like gone and see, I mean, that's my dream in New York and I haven't quite pulled it off, but like to walk past a window or like a billboard and say, I did that shoot or I was on that
That's an
campaign.
interesting goal to have. And I think that as a producer, the motivation is a little bit different. So the photographer or the
Yeah.
director is excited to see their work on the billboard, on those moving,
In the
in the wild.
wild.
And
Yeah.
for me, as someone who like I develop creativity and I am supporting, I'm
Hmm.
behind the scenes. So what I get excited about is, the work that I do all happens before the actual shoot days. And so there's,
Yeah.
people don't understand that for me, my excitement is getting to the actual shoot day. So that's when, if I have
Got it.
done my job correctly, that means that when I get to the shoot day, it's almost like this relief and this big exhale
Mm-hmm.
because I have done all of the preparation. And one of my company mottos is victory loves preparation, right? So one of my
Yeah.
core values is freedom, and then the flip side of that is discipline. So, and victory needs preparation. So those are just
Yeah, I love that. That's like the other quote is luck equals preparation and opportunity.
mm,
Something like that. So like, yeah, people say, "Oh, you're so lucky," and you're like, "Well, yeah, luck is when you're prepared, and then the right opportunity comes and you do it." But
absolutely.
yeah, I love
Yeah,
exactly what
and
you're
I
saying.
also,
Yeah,
when people say lucky, I really prefer the word fortune because you have a hand
yeah,
at creating your own fortune. And so life doesn't happen to
yes,
you. And so part of living this epic freelance life is realizing that this rests in your hands, this life that you have, right? And you have the
yep,
power to create it. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It doesn't have to follow a certain linear path. My life certainly did not follow a linear path, and
I
I
know. Okay, I'm so you're segueing for me. I was gonna do this exact same thing. So let's talk about the epic freelance life. Why would you say that your life hasn't followed a linear path, and are you happy with what's like your circumstances right now?
yes.
Those are two very big different
Yeah, they
questions, I
are, but
guess.
I'll kick things off and take it way back. So I have been traveling
Okay.
alone, from the age of 4. I have been flying back and forth between Michigan and Northern Germany since I was 4 years old, 3 times a year. And so
Mm,
I think that's when things started for me. It's like not living this, small town life, always going back and forth between cultures, being on my own a lot,
yeah.
being very independent. I'm not saying that at 4 years old I was independent, but that's when things started.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then the second part of your question.
And
Mhm.
and so oh, well, basically, like, I met you in New York City, but over the pandemic, you moved, and now you're even in a different country. So where are you these days? And maybe share as much about that as you like. But I like this idea that you're kind of like, location independent right now.
Yes, and so I grew up internationally. I grew up multiculturally, and I also have always crafted my own international experience. So even when I was in
Mhm.
university, I started and ended my studies at a particular university, but within that time, I also made sure to independently organize study abroad programs and exchanges in different countries. And so I ended up living in, I don't know, 5 or 6 different cities and countries
Oh,
during my
cool.
university
I
time.
didn't know
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's always been a really big part of my world. And so, yeah, so when we met, I was living in New York City where I lived for 11 years. And even during the time of living in New York City, because I'm known for international work, I was constantly flying and traveling around for projects. And
Yeah.
in October of 2020, I decided that I just was not really living my values. And so if I have freedom as one of my core essential values, things weren't lining up for me, especially during the pandemic where the whole world
Mhm.
just kind of came crashing down. And I decided to pack up my things and go to Berlin. So I'm lucky enough to have 2
Yay.
citizenships, and I have German citizenship, so that was very easy for me. And then in March, I decided to come to Cape Town. So you may know, but I spend a lot of time in South Africa. This is one of my soul homes, and this
Mhm.
past year has really been an eye opener for me to remind me to come back to, like, yes, my projects have taken me all over the world, but I don't have to have one base right now. And so home is where I
Yeah.
create it. And what anchors me is myself. Um, and so it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be
Well,
a certain apartment or, yeah.
got it. But I want to know. Okay, so here's like a particular question. when you went to Berlin, I'm guessing that you like created work for yourself out there. But when you went to South Africa, were you going there for work primarily, or just like another like living somewhere else kind of reason,
I think both Berlin and
or was it
I think
both?
it's both. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think it's both. So Berlin is,
I'm just wondering if like jobs take you places, or you go places and you create jobs.
I
You
go
know?
places and I create jobs, Philip. Hmm.
Yeah, I love
Hmm.
that. Okay. That was my suspicion, I guess. And what kind of how did you generate, maybe this is kind of for the audience, like when you went to Berlin, I'm assuming you knew just a couple people, but not a huge network. And so how did you create work for yourself there? Or what did you like spend energy towards?
Yeah, so part of what I do with the creative development business that I have is that I work with visual creators, photographers, videographers, illustrators,
Hmm.
and I am also really big on connecting. So, how do we make connections between small businesses, medium businesses, advertising agencies, and these visual creators? So, that's something that I always tap into. And part of my nature is I love the way that you're interviewing me right now. I love connecting with humans and talking to them, like amplifying their stories and their voices, which is something I did on my,
Yes.
I still continue to do on theproducer.com. And that's just part of my nature, and it's something I love to do, and I do it even when people are not paying me. So that is something that I've been able to essentially monetize in having this worldwide network and worldwide resource, of individuals that I've connected with. And so that's something that I've been able to play with, whether I'm in South Africa or Amsterdam or Berlin. Hmm.
Yeah. You created over the pandemic a couple of like virtual communities online, basically,
Yes,
right?
thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah, so during the
Yes.
pandemic, I began hosting a program called Creative Camp, and they're quarterly programs where we bring together visual creators and honestly, everybody is a creative, right? So if you're truly tapping into
Sure.
that word, but for
Yes.
for all intents and purposes, these are people in the visual arts. And every quarter we have a small group of individuals that meet every other week, and we break through creative challenges. We clarify those. We have some built-in like trusted organic networking, and it's been a really special container, not to overuse that new agey word, but it's been really, really lovely. And
Sure.
so through that, we're establishing personal connections. We are providing professional support, and I also do like one-on-one coaching and consulting for people in the visual arts. So so
Cool.
if people, don't feel comfortable discussing their obstacles in a group setting, then they can work with me directly. And, unlike a traditional photo consultant, I do a little bit more like personal development that's brought into that. There's a real human touch.
Mm,
But then with
cool.
my
Yeah.
15 years of experience, I can help them actually get work. So that's important too.
So I'm gonna make sure I understand this. Then you are making money through your commercial productions, which I'm assuming is the bulk of your income. Are you charging for Creative Camp
I am.
currently? And is that
Yes,
still
it's still
running?
running.
Okay.
Hmm.
Got it. And you are doing one-on-one consulting with photographers, videographers, creatives. So you're earning money at least three ways. Am I missing anything in your arsenal of
Yes.
jobs?
And so there are active productions, but then there are photographers and directors who just need support with an estimate or negotiations, or perhaps there's
Hmm,
imagery that needs to be relicensed and they don't know how to handle those communications or those contracts or how to price things. So I do that as a creative management offer. And
cool.
yeah, and then I also consult for startups, for small businesses and agencies as well.
Wow, I had no idea about this part, Annika.
Yeah.
I love that. So
You know,
I guess,
actually I'm
oh
gonna
yeah, go
interrupt you for
ahead.
just a moment because I think that part of this difficulty of living such a big, bold, expansive life is that, having
Yeah.
that elevator pitch, there's this, assumption that you need to like have your 30-second elevator pitch or 10-second elevator pitch, and that you need to be confined into this tiny little locker or this container. And I've never
Hmm.
really fit into those things. So that's, and I don't, and I'm not great about tooting my own horn and saying all the things that I do. So a lot of
Yeah.
it happens below the surface. Um, but, you know, thank you for asking me about that.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. I call people like you, and maybe it's in a different industry, like quietly killing it. Like there's so many things you're doing that people don't even know, and you're not someone who like brags a lot or is like big on self PR necessarily. And so it's always a surprise and kind of exciting to find out like all the little things, projects that you're
Oh,
working on.
thank you, Philip. And
But
yeah, if anybody wants to
yeah.
teach me about self PR, then that's definitely an area I need to
Oh
delegate.
my gosh. It's crazy. you and I both know this in our worlds. I'm in like the events, kind of luxury events side of photography, and you're way more on the commercial production side. But there's people who are like really good workers, and there's people who are really good at PR, like self
Mm,
PR, and some people are good at both. But oftentimes it's like one or the other. And the people who are really good at PR might not execute like what we all know how they really work, but they're just good at like getting their names in the right places with the right
mm.
people, which is sometimes frustrating. It's funny. But I'm always looking out for the quiet killers, the people who are like truly, truly working hard and even through a pandemic or whatever.
The dark horses.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. So I guess I want to pull it down to earth a little bit and talk about you said you travel all the time. Can you just give our listeners some like real tangible travel hacks? Is there anything that you take pride in when you travel, like how you pack, or I don't know if you use TSA PreCheck or whatever. Is there anything that comes to mind when you travel that makes your experience kind of particularly easy and
Yes,
wonderful?
I always have a second toiletry kit packed, always. That's just ready to go for travel, so I'm never
Oh.
going to forget anything. And then I like to have my travel be a lovely, beautiful experience. So knowing that you're waiting in lines and that you're in a
Hmm.
cramped, airplane, what are the things that you can bring along that make that experience nicer for you? So I make sure and I have like a travel candle that I bring. And when I'm on the airplane, I have like,
What? I didn't know this.
yes, You- we have
That's so wait, you don't light the candle
not
on the
on the
plane,
airplane, but I mean, like,
obviously.
when I'm going to be somewhere for work, let's say you're gonna be in some generic hotel for 3 days. So
Yeah.
then I bring little things, I bring, like, Palo Santo, I bring a travel candle, I bring, like, a
That's
small
amazing.
I have like, this very small African, it's essentially a blanket that you can use as, like, a beach sarong, or it's a
Yeah.
multi-use thing, right? And I also like to have things that are multi-use, that have multiple purposes. So,
Ooh, this is
yeah,
so
because,
good.
I grew up with MacGyver, right? So, like, what and I'm a producer, so that means one of my
Mhm.
greatest, assets in terms of creativity is being resourceful, figuring out how things can be reused and repurposed and figuring out how to get things done. So, um,
Yeah, that blanket wrap thing is
yeah.
perfect for a
Yeah,
lot.
and, I've got a Leatherman that I travel with as well, and that always comes in handy. It's actually sitting next to me right now. And then
Cool.
yeah, definitely. I've got the TSA pre-check. I've got the global entry. I have the European ones. I make sure that um
Mhm.
this is another thing, that when you renew your passport, you can ask for extra pages to be put in so that you're not running out of pages 2 years
Oh, yeah,
in, because that's
I did
yeah,
that.
exactly. So because I was always filling up my passports too quickly with visas and stamps. So
Mm,
that's kind of a long-term hack, I would say. And
that's a good
um,
one.
and then also being really nice to the flight attendants who have, a crappy job. And if you're nice, like, just be nice to everyone
Yeah.
around you. Like, what's the golden rule? That's truly another one of my
Yep.
values, is do unto others as you would have done to you. And kindness doesn't cost you anything. There's a human at the end of every one of your communications and interactions in life. So
Yeah,
just remembering
that's
that,
exactly right.
have loving kindness.
You mentioned I'm gonna bring this back kind of a little bit, but you mentioned one of your values And before you had said that freedom was your one of your top values, and that's 100% my top value as well. And I think that what something that you and I have done really well, and this is for all the listeners, is crafted or created and designed a life for ourselves that honors that top value,
Thank
um,
you.
instead of the other way around. Like the backwards way of thinking, and I think most people do this, is like, I want to be able to travel the world and like do whatever I want. So I'm going to become like an investment banker and have a lot of money so I can do all of that. And it's so backwards because they lose. Yeah, I think if you pursue freedom first, which it sounds like you have done, then everything else, it doesn't matter if you're earning like 100,000, $500,000 or
Yeah.
50,000. Like
And
you're still living that top
yeah,
value,
and I
right?
think the point there is that what does money really mean? And like money means something different.
Yeah,
It's really
exactly.
just a metaphor for freedom for me. And so it's never been about money is
Same.
not my motivator. My motivators are freedom and connection, and those are my values. And so
Yeah.
when, you know, and there are other ways of living a rich, abundant life without necessarily always coming back to the dollar amount or the amount of money in the bank, right? So it's really about having this big,
Yep.
bold, rich life of experiences, of connections with individuals, of beauty, of art and beauty surrounding us as well. And yeah.
So I totally agree. I also know that you work really, really hard. So I'm curious how you take care of yourself and not get burned out.
Mm. Well, being in South Africa is part of how I'm taking care of myself right now. So this place feels like home so much for me, and I love to
Mm.
be in, on, near, under, on the water. So,
Oh
going
yeah.
for a swim in the morning, going for a walk along the ocean, those are ways that I calm my nervous system down. You're right. I work a lot, and I work really
Yeah.
hard. And then the other things that I do, I exercise, I journal on a daily basis, I meditate, I cook for
Mm.
myself, I eat really healthfully, and I take care of
This is
I
lovely.
take care of my inner world as much as I take care of my outer world.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, good. So you are taking care of yourself. Just wanted to make
Thank
sure.
you. Thanks for looking out for me.
um, yeah, yeah. Also, this is sort of like a logistical question, but when you go to somewhere like South Africa for a while, how do you decide where to stay? Are you on Airbnb finding places or some other method?
No,
And
I just rented a house. Hmm.
okay, uh, but not on Airbnb or something
No,
else.
just something else. I just directly rented from,
Uh,
yeah. So
that's awesome.
yeah, I
Okay,
mean, when I
cool.
when I travel, Airbnb is very easy and accessible, obviously. And what I have found in recent years, where the original intention of Airbnb was to give you this like real experience. Now there's a lot of properties on Airbnb that are just there as rental, like
Yeah,
management properties. And there's also
yeah,
this
yeah.
Instagramification of properties where everything
Yep.
is,
Totally generic.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's not quite as, yeah,
Well,
enticing to me.
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to just rent a house direct though, actually. Like, is that easy to do in other countries? The only thing I could think of is like Craigslist,
Oh,
but
no, you just contact
yeah.
real estate agents.
Oh, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. That's the adult thing
Yeah,
to do. Got it.
yeah,
That's funny. Okay, cool. And you're in are you in Cape
I
Town
am.
or
Yep, I'm in Cape
Johannesburg?
Town. Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. I was there many, many years
Well, you're
ago.
welcome back anytime.
Um, yeah, it's lovely there. And I'm actually from Santa Barbara, and I remember being in Cape Town and thinking, this is like the identical climate to my hometown. And I had this thought that South Africa was like the same distance below the equator as Santa Barbara probably is above the equator. because like the climate, I was like, this is exactly the same. Like the house, you know what I mean? All the vegetation that
Yeah.
was there, everything reminded me of Santa Barbara, except that people drove on the other side of the road, and it was such a weird experience. But it's so beautiful, and the temperature's so great all the time.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities with California, and I'm actually sitting in my car right now with the stick shift on the opposite, with the steering wheel on the other opposite
Oh yeah,
side. Um, yeah, and so I think that,
that's
yeah,
funny.
although I'm in Cape Town right now, I know that in a month's time I'll be back in Europe, and so I know
Hmm.
that this doesn't fit into everyone's neat and tidy box, but I'll be in Amsterdam for a month or two, and then I'll be in Berlin for a month or two, and then I'll probably be in New York for a bit, and then back to Cape Town. Yeah,
Cool.
so I feel really
So
fortunate.
yeah, it sounds. I know it sounds like you're living your best life, and I really love that
Thank
for
you.
you. And you figured out how to make it work where you can be bidding on jobs. It doesn't matter where you are. You're living where you want to live and meeting cool people and working. And if you need to be in New York for a job, you fly to New York and you do the job.
Yeah,
And
exactly, and,
yeah,
I
I
also
love
think
that.
it's you have to be realistic about what that entails, so, if I were just
Sure.
operating in the European and African markets, I'd be on similar time zones, but the reality is half of my business is
Oh,
US based, which means that, right now I am
oh,
working.
your hours must be
Yeah,
crazy.
they are sometimes, but that's
Mm.
okay because that is, part of the balance of getting to lead this
Yeah.
life. And I think that's also something to be realistic about is, yes, I'm choosing this, but I'm also choosing to still honor the clients that I have and honor the work. And that also means that, on a Friday night, I might be working until 8 or 9 p.m. But it also means that I get to start,
Mm.
I get to have my mornings for myself, which I really cherish. And I
Oh
get
yeah,
to,
that's really
yeah, I get to
nice.
go swimming and do all that stuff. So, um, and then there are some other if we wanna take it down and really ground into some of those things that support our
Sure.
business, our freelance life, there are I am working with an assistant right now who happens to be in Chicago, so I'm training her, and we do, like, Zoom training sessions, and that time zone, we're 7
Cool.
hours apart, and so that can be challenging, but that's one way of, working smarter is also
That's like
realizing.
yeah, it's an extra arm that is like based in another time zone that can be working while you're
Yeah,
sleeping.
absolutely. Yep,
Yeah.
and,
And how did you find this person? Just curious, like
although
LinkedIn or personal network?
personal network, and so I did, do a couple of job postings, and honestly,
Hmm.
those did not yield there's power in having somebody be vetted and vouched
Yeah.
for, which is also why I was that's why I also do interviews with individuals on the producer.com because, worldwide crew, if you're flying around and you're putting together, a really important shoot, you wanna know that you can rely on somebody, and so that's why I started,
Yep.
interviewing individuals because you want the good-hearted people. So, anyway, I just went off on a tangent. However, with this assistant, it was just through asking a few friends if they had recommendations, and then somebody great came down the pipelines. Yeah,
Oh, I love
and
that. Good people are so hard to find.
it's a luxury problem, right? And and there's other things too that
Yeah.
support our business. And I'm always really I like to be an early adopter on certain things. I know that you are too, Philip, with different tech,
Hmm.
tech things and programs.
Oh yeah, you were on Clubhouse super early. I
Yes,
remember that.
yeah. So I still love Clubhouse a little bit less at the moment, and
Hmm.
but I'm also one thing that I've discovered recently that has been really beneficial for me is when I am emailing my audience for the producer.com or for my production company, I've been using a really beautiful email program. Sorry, I think the actual correction is like a newsletter program. So in the
Yeah,
past,
yeah.
I had people on Mailchimp, and I was just finding that to be very clunky.
Yep.
And I am not a web designer, but I want something. I work in the visual arts. I need things to be beautiful, and then I also need a succinct workflow. And so I have been using Flowdesk, and
Oh,
Flowdesk is
cool.
so beautiful. It's so streamlined. It's so easy. It's almost like a template style email builder, the way that Squarespace is for websites. Really
Yeah.
intuitive, so
Interesting.
intuitive. And then the great thing about it is you can establish workflows. So you send out that email, and if somebody takes a certain action with with your email, then you can trigger different follow up. And so you're basically just,
Yeah.
you're delegating something rather to another human assistant or to your own time because your time as a freelancer is irreplaceable and invaluable. Now you have a machine. Now you have a program doing this for you. And so,
Yeah,
um, and
that's
I
great.
also contacted Flowdesk, and they have a 50% off for the lifetime subscription, like 50% off your monthly or annual. And
Sure.
so there's a code that I can share with you and your audience.
Oh, Annika is straight up plugging Flowdesk right
Yes,
now.
absolutely.
Tell us what the code
It's
is. We'll send this out to
it's
the
the
masses.
producer, all caps, the producer.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Okay. So that producer, if people are looking for a system that's alternative to MailChimp, MailChimp is like the godfather, but definitely better options have come up since, and Flowdesk is one of
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that is
Okay. So that producer, if people are looking for lifetime subscriptions and they want a great deal, that's a good
it is,
discount.
yeah, it's
That's
like
crazy.
50% off, and, it's made my life so much easier, and, I never wanna be in a place of overwhelm or frustration, and I also think it's important to
Yeah.
recognize what those triggers are for you. So, if there's something that you don't enjoy in your business, if there's something that you don't, that you're not good at, like, take stock and figure out ways to delegate and to
Yeah.
supplement, because in the past I think we've often heard like, oh, you need to work on your weaknesses. Well, maybe just focus on your strengths, and if there's something you don't want to do, don't do it. Find something else.
Yeah. A hundred
Yeah, because
percent.
there are people who really enjoy this, and there are programs that can do it for you, so why not just, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been a big.
And so
Mhm.
I was talking to someone yesterday about this. They were saying, like, you never need to be doing like $10 tasks or $15 tasks if that's your minimum wage. And a $15 task would be like posting on Instagram or sending, like, composing an email newsletter, things like that that are sort of just like, yeah, time sucks, sort of simple to do, but a lot of time and energy. And for bosses, that stuff can be
Yeah,
delegated for
absolutely, and
sure.
when I was living in New York City
Yeah.
as well, I used a service, that I don't even know that they still exist, or maybe they've renamed themselves, but they would do my grocery shopping. They would do
Oh,
my errands, and, like, if I had dry cleaning to pick up, if I had, laundry to pick up.
amazing. This is different than
Yes,
TaskRabbit?
it's different from TaskRabbit. They had an app. It was called Hello Alfred, and I don't actually think that they exist anymore, but,
Oh, I remember when that was like,
mhm.
yeah, I remember when that was coming out big. That's cool. It looks like their website is still
Oh, good.
live. So I would say, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and then what I
interesting.
loved
They still
loved
exist, I
about
think.
that too is, I'm really big on eating healthfully, and they would, it was a real human algorithm where they would get smarter every time they came to visit, and they would come, once a week, and they would always get the exact groceries that I needed and wanted, and they understood, what was happening in my world. So, that
That's
was a good
awesome.
hack.
Yeah, Hello Alfred is like the personal
Yes.
butler,
Yeah.
right? That's the
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So a little domestic support
Cool.
there.
So yeah, these are great. We could do like literally an entire podcast episode just on digital hacks and tips. But I actually want to know, maybe what's I think as solopreneurs, we are never just like, I think successful solopreneurs are always like have something up their sleeve or they're working on something exciting. So is there anything that you're building or doing or like thinking about that might come to life in the next year or two that you feel like sharing?
Well, what's come
And if not, that's also okay.
Thanks. So, what has come to life is that I am now regularly hosting creative camp sessions every quarter. So, that's now
Oh,
firmly
cool.
in the books every quarter. The next one is June 7th. Oh, I think that because I'm not at liberty to like discuss like everything right now,
Yeah,
and things do shift and develop as you're building something new. And so
of
I feel
course.
like I don't want to lose your listeners by being so vague, and I'm not trying to sidestep things, but
No,
I'm
that's
also
fine.
happy to
Yeah.
to discuss, like we can do a second interview, and we can do yeah.
No, no, I will. I know when things are being built
Yeah.
out and there's lots of hands involved, you can't really like say too much. So let's just say Annika's working on something big and exciting. And if you follow her at theproducer.com, I'm sure you'll hear about it soon. So,
Thank you. Yeah. And I have to
um,
say too that
yeah.
one other thing that I love about this life is that having a bit more time this past year to connect with creatives one-on-one. And I know that this is an element that you've been building out as well, Philip, is your coaching, the way that I've been building out my creative development and my
Mm.
consulting, like my one-on-one creative development. So that's been really, really rewarding for me. And I don't think I would have had,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so
I would not have
beautiful.
had time for it or given myself the space to really do that
Yep.
if I was still in this whole matrixy, like spinning wheel
Yep.
situation. And so that's been a real, like it has just lit me up and I love it.
How many people are you working with right now? Are you able to
Yeah,
share?
I work with 5 individuals, one-to-one.
Oh, that's so great. I'm currently, I just had my last phone call with someone last night. So I only have one coaching client, but my dream was always to be like around 3 to 5. I think that's really beautiful, Annika.
Mhm.
Um, and you're pouring into other people. They're paying you, but it doesn't matter because there's like so much value. I feel like the role that you and I are in is to like accelerate people's learning and growth process like 10 times. It took me so long to raise my prices to the point where I felt, good about it. But having someone on your side who's like, this is what you could do, this is who you should talk to.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, like
huge.
helping
I'm sure you're a huge blessing in their
oh, thank you,
lives.
Philip. Yeah, it's been really rewarding.
Is there any final words you'd want to share with the people? Anything you're reading that you think we should know about? Any I don't know, words of wisdom for someone who's been in the game for a
Yeah,
long time?
I think that we really do get to create this big, beautiful, bold life that we have. And so sometimes there are those parental voices, those outside voices that say, this is what your life is supposed to look like. And I would like to challenge your listeners to really look within and see
Yes.
what are those things that light you up? And are you doing those on a regular basis? How can you craft a life out of that? And just remember that your life doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Nobody else has to understand it. It just needs to be rewarding and fulfilling for you.
I love that so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Annika.
Philip.
We'll have you back again for sure to get all the good, juicy
It was such a
updates.
joy. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. You're awesome. I appreciate you and your time. Okay. Have a
You
beautiful
too.
day.
Bye.